Okay, so welcome to the Tech and Culture Speaker Series. My name is Marcus Webb, and I'm the Economic Inclusion Fellow at Center State CEO, and I also will be moderating tonight's event. Before we get started, I wanted to say thank you to JP Morgan Chase for sponsoring this event and sponsoring a lot of the tech and culture work that we're doing around trying to diversify the tech industry and make sure that we're, bringing equal opportunity in tech-related fields to individuals from Central New York. So once again, thank you, JP Morgan Chase, for helping us do this work. I also wanted to go over a few ground rules before we get started. All participants should remain muted during the first half of the event until we get to the second half, where you can come off of mute and ask any questions that you may have based on the presentation. This session will be recorded and made public on the Generation Next social media page and also on the Center State CEO website. So if you like the event and you wanted to refer a friend, you can send them to the Center State CEO page and they can rewatch the recap. And lastly, the chat will be open for comments and questions that you may have. But like I said earlier, we won't get to those towards the end of the event. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our amazing speaker, Damani Corbin. He's the Vice President of Economic Development at Blacks on Wall Street, Inc. And I would also like to take the time to read you all his bio. As a product of New York City, Damani Corbin is actively involved in many community organizations in grassroots initiatives where he attributes much of his success. Damani is the Vice President of Economic Development at Blacks on Wall Street, Inc., a non-for-profit organization in New York City focused on closing the opportunity gap for underrepresented African Americans in corporate America. Professionally, Damani works at a startup technology company, Weaveworks. Damani was brought into Weaveworks to develop and implement the sales strategy for the enterprise sales platform WKP Weaves Kubernetes. Damani, did I pronounce that right?
You did.
Okay,
You sound like an expert there.
Kubernetes platform. The reality of working in a startup is that you often have to wear multiple hats. Along with scaling across the U.S., Damani is very active with developer experience as well as field and product marketing initiatives. Prior to Weaveworks, Damani worked at Pivotal Software, where he spent a lot of time building out the developer experience strategy in New York City and really taking his customers on journeys of adopting cloud-native technologies. After college, Damani built a great reputation at Xerox Corporation prior to moving to Oracle Corporation, where he touched every layer of technology stack, which makes him very rounded. Damani is a double alumni at Lemoyne College in Syracuse, New York, where he obtained his BA in marketing and MBA. Damani enjoys traveling and spending quality time with his wife, Melissa, and their 3 children, Malik, Micaiah, and Malia. Is that right too, Damani?
Micah, Malik, and Malia, but 98.5% there.
All right, I appreciate it. Do you have anything that you would like to say before we get started?
Nothing too major, but I just wanted to really pat Center State CEO on the back for the amazing work that they're doing within the community and really the push that they're making. And specifically, I was telling Marcus in our pre-conversation, I was just really proud of him, just as a young man, just really stepping into this. He's, pseudo-tech stepping into the tech world. And from the time that I've met him just, half a year ago, 6-7 months ago, the way that he has elevated as a professional has really he's really leaped bounds. And I think that is a testament to, one, just giving someone an opportunity within a space. So he didn't know anything about space. He graduated from Syracuse University. But I was tapped on to be a mentor and to give some advice into this work that he's doing and the way that he's adopted and the way that he's communicated with so many professionals and kind of the path that he's laying for Center State is really phenomenal. So kudos to you, Marcus, and the hard work that you've been putting into improving your craft, because that's a big part of it, right? Some people can give you an opportunity, but once you're at the table, you got to show up and do what you have to do. And you're doing that. So continue the hard work.
Truly appreciate it, Damani. Definitely. Thank you. So just to get things started, I like to just learn a little bit. Well, I know a lot about you, but I want you to tell, audience a little bit more about yourself. So what was it like for you growing up in New York City?
So I'm looking at a couple of the names, and I see a lot of familiar faces in familiar boxes, some familiar names. So shout out to the Lemoyne crew and the amazing support staff that's here at Lemoyne. But growing up in New York City was just simply amazing. It's truly a melting pot, and it gives you a great deal of exposure into many different backgrounds and experiences. So I was one who had the opportunity to do a lot of traveling, primarily because of basketball. So basketball afforded me the opportunity to not just really stay within the New York City or the Brooklyn area, but travel kind of wide and really get a chance to see a lot of different areas. And then my family is also from Guyana, South America. So had the opportunity to actually, embrace that Caribbean culture. And in New York City, in Brooklyn specifically, there's, a huge amount of that international and just Caribbean type of network. So it gives you a different exposure. But once you cross over the Brooklyn Bridge and head over into Manhattan, it's a whole nother world altogether. So Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, each borough is unique in of itself. So, I think it allowed me to get some tough skin, but also it rounded me in a way that prepared me for any opportunities that I would face in my career and my journey.
Amazing. So coming out of New York City, what made you choose to go to Lemoyne College?
So thank you to one shout out to Steve Evans and Buddy Evans and the Evans family. I was recruited. I had the opportunity to be recruited at the collegiate level, and prior to Steve and Buddy seeing me play basketball, I didn't get a chance to hear or wasn't exposed to Lemoyne College. But once I got my first visit on campus, it's a little contagious. So, got on campus, loved it, and the history was there.
See. All right, just to transition a little bit, can you tell us a little bit about Blacks on Wall Street, Inc.?
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. So Blacks on Wall Street, nonprofit in New York City, and the purpose is really to bridge the opportunity gap of African Americans, specifically underrepresented in New York City, by one, exposure. So I'm a firm believer you cannot become what you don't see. So what we do is we expose high school students to professional careers. So specifically in the areas of finance and technology, so that they can be able to see what's not typically around them every day. So, we have, north of 1.2 million students within the New York City school system. However, majority of them only go to school with people that look like themselves. And the careers that are surrounding the neighborhoods are not a really true representation of the type of money that you can actually make within inside of New York City. So many students, like I was saying, are really sheltered in that they only get a chance to see within a couple of blocks radius, and the opportunities that they see is not really indicative of the type of careers. So they're not seeing lawyers, professionals. So what we try to do is really just open up their eyes, and by exposing them, they have the opportunity to increase the trajectory of their life.
I think that's amazing work because, coming from, the urban community and, different backgrounds like that, is all you see is, professional basketball players or, rappers and stuff like that. So you think that's your only outlet. Then you have people like yourself that can come in and show them that there's other avenues that you can go into and to make some pretty good money and make a living. I appreciate it. I see you work for a lot of large multinational companies as well. So can you tell us, just give us a little bit of insight? Multinational companies as well as startups. Can you just give us a little bit of insight on both?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm currently working in the startup environment, but prior to, I worked at some pretty large multinational organizations. And what I would tell, folks that are looking at this recording, like in the future, when you're kind of thinking about your career and what you want to do, I think you want to start thinking about what type of company would be right for you. So it's similar to the conversation that, you know, one would have had when I was coming off to college. Hey, do you want to be a big fish in a small ocean, or do you want to be a small fish in a big ocean? You can kind of relate that to, you know, going to SU versus going to Lemoyne, the experience that you have.
Right.
I think at the larger organizations, one may assume that the machine runs better, or the oil in the machine kind of runs a little bit better. I think at a smaller organization, you get a chance to actually see how the sausage is made, if you will, and you have some type of input into the processes, because they're not as strong and they're not as rigid as there are in a larger organization. But I really think the biggest thing to note that really got me excited about the startup world was that the potential to make money off of stock options. So in my first startup opportunity, I was given 30,000 shares, you know, additionally, and they were at a couple of cents. And I wasn't really sure. And so I had to do some research into like what was kind of like the worth of this. So you get a chance to realize, like, if this company goes public, these shares then convert. And you look at the potential IPO price, initial public offering price, you realize that, you know, upon my salary, there's a huge upside in that I'm actually sitting on what is potentially $1 million+ of like fake play money, you know, monopoly money, if you will. But at the very least, like, you're now vested into this company's success at a different, like, you're rooting for the success of this company, because you're holding on to some shares and you're hoping that this company goes public, it does well, it gets purchased. So in my first opportunity, unfortunately, I started too late and my shares didn't convert early enough. So, you know, I didn't make any significant money. But hopefully this time around, that changes.
Yeah.
But there's a number of differences between a startup and a large organization. But I'll leave this nugget with you. In everything that we do, there's three things that I think you need to pay attention to: the people, the process, and then the product. So people talk about people, process, you know, technology. You know, you can, you know, switch out that last P and use technology, use different things. But really understanding the people, it gives you an understanding as to like what may be a good fit for you. Understanding the process in itself gives you an understanding as to how things may go. And then the combination of those things will have a great impact into the final product that you end up seeing at the end result.
So, did you ever have any interest in, you know, creating your own startup?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, well, I would say less of a startup. So some people think of it like, oh, I want to build a company. I think business is all about solving problems, right? And I think that people need to understand that, hey, you're really solving problems in business. And really that's the function of any business. And that's the function of any technology that one launches. It should be solving a problem. I think I'm a natural problem solver. So in nature, I often see gaps. And when you see those gaps, you try to fill those gaps accordingly. So right. Along my career, I've always kind of stepped up and, you know, started some entrepreneurial things. I mean, I was selling water before it was popular, right? Like I was selling, I was the original M&M seller on the trains and on the streets. After games, I used to walk around with my own separate cooler. So after I finished playing the basketball game, I had my own set of waters and Capri Suns that my mother and we went to go purchase at BJ's to ensure that I had my little shop after my basketball games.
I love it.
And I had workers too. So I had the biddies, the 10 and under selling for me. So I had a full operation. So it's in terms of entrepreneurship, I think I wrote the book a couple times over.
I love it. All right, just to transition back a little bit to technology. As I mentioned in the beginning, we're doing a lot around trying to diversify tech here in Central New York and, identify a bunch of different opportunities for individuals to get involved with around tech. So can you talk to us a little bit about the variety of different roles within the tech industry?
Yeah, great question. Great question, Marcus. Well, one, I again, just want to pat you on the back in terms of from a Central New York region, there's a number of schools that are up here. And, I see some folks from SU. I see obviously folks from Lemoyne on. Just continue to urge that we cannot forget about the transplants, if you will. And this is a term in different areas. If you look at Seattle, Seattle of itself, it's made up, Microsoft, Boeing, Amazon. These number of organizations have kind of built the cities, and they actually had to import all of their human capital because there wasn't that capital that was there before. So just continue to urge you as people come into the city. We talk about the Black community at Lemoyne, the Black community at SU, the multicultural community at Binghamton. Don't forget about the transplants that are coming in and out and the affinity that they have with the region over time. Spending 4 to 5 years at a particular place or location is a significant amount of time that you may want to attract, and you can pull on that leverage.
Great point.
Yeah, so I didn't want that thought to pass me. But getting back to your question specifically around the variety of different roles in technology, often people usually only think about software developers and engineers when they talk about technology. And I think that this is the epitome of, we have to get into tech, we have to get you coding. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that is a key role and it's necessary. So we should not devalue any emphasis on it at all. I think what we do need to do is open our eyes and actually investigate the technology industry to understand that there's a variety of different roles within inside of an organization that people can get excited about. So for example, like I said, technology is a business of itself. So all of the different business functions are necessary within the tech industry as well. But before we go to all of the different different business roles, from a true business, from a true software perspective, I kind of split it down the middle in terms of, is your organization building software or is your organization buying software? The build versus buy. And I think that this gives you a better understanding. So if we start on the build side of it, from a build standpoint, that engineer, the software developer, is key in that initial ideation and the building of the actual software that's there. So I think that there's a carve out space for the development of software. Folks need to understand that there's a huge space for operations. So after the software is built, one needs to then operate the software. Mm-hmm. So you need to understand what needs to be in place even for that software to get to market. And then we move over into the business. Because actually tying business value with technological advances is necessary even to get a product to market. So from a build standpoint, I highlight 3 areas: building it, developing it, right? That's the first area. 2, operating the software, and then 3, the business. So under those three different areas, there are also a whole host of jobs that are necessary. Mm-hmm. So for example, when we start under building, apart from a software engineer, there's front end and back end. There's full stack. Mm-hmm. So those are three specific terms, whether you are building in Java, Ruby, Scala, Node.js, .NET. These are all software frameworks that one can pick up if they want to build software. When you're looking out there, you need to understand what type of software and what type of code, what type of infrastructure, what type of language has already been started to be utilized. So once you start writing in Node.js, for example, or .NET, usually a lot of that build is going to go in that direction. When we take a step back from just the developers, there needs to be designers. So a lot of people can draw at a young age, but not a lot of people are being pushed to being designers. What's a designer? A designer is actually looking at the user interface or the user experience of the software, and they're actually putting it together from a visual standpoint to make sure that it's usable and it actually comes across in a way that the experience for the end user is well. And there's actually a bit of research that actually goes into that. And in saying that, I said designer, I said UI. So there's like a UI engineer, user interface engineer. There's a UX engineer. There's the user experience engineer. But all of those are essentially different per se than the typical software engineer developer that people typically speak about. And then in that entire suite of what's coming together from a build perspective, there's a third person called a project manager or product manager. And this product manager is speaking to the business and translating the needs, the priorities of the business so that the developers can work on the appropriate task at the appropriate times so they don't waste their time, with functionality that's not necessary for day one. So everyone may have a feature that they want to see, but all of those features shouldn't be prioritized the same way. So the product manager, I'm saying there's a difference. Again, another term for those that's being recorded, you can pause this, stop, write it down. There's a difference between a product manager and a project manager. Those are also two separate roles. What I'm speaking about specifically here is a product manager and the value of the product manager in the build of the software. So they are actually responsible for how the software is going to come to market. And they're, sometimes looked at as like the CEO of the product. So those three components per se is actually what's necessary from a build perspective. So I mentioned a number of roles there, but there's a laundry list of others, right? Developer experience is a huge area that's growing. There's developer marketing, there's traditional marketing, there's sales, there's sales engineering, there is customer success. Customer success is huge. Some people may look at it in the past as customer service, right? You may have an issue and you may need to call up your 1-800 number. But the days are gone where there's the typical picking up of the phone. Now there's chat bots when you have an issue that you need to interact with. There are emails and there's ticketing systems that need to be put in place. And one wants to ensure that when you're using a particular software, that the experience that the user have is stellar, one, so that you can attract more users, and two, so that you can fulfill the obligations of the particular software and that people continue to subscribe. So we're in the subscription nature of a business where the business model has changed in that you only have every month to satisfy that customer or every year to satisfy that customer, because at the end of every month, your users are actually either going to go up or they're going to go down. And that's going to be a direct indication of how things are going. So the business model has actually changed in a way from a software perspective that the way you think about how you support your product is super important. So this customer success department there's a huge amount of emphasis there because the customer retention is a huge metric that's being measured by the business. So those are just, a couple of things. And in all of these roles, there's management opportunities. So all of those I just mentioned is one layer, but there's a necessity to manage the people underneath. So there needs to be a hierarchy. So the people skills that you're getting along the way, after you get the hard skills, you then need to be able to have that be applicable across multiple people in the organization so that you can manage, lead, direct, so on and so forth. That was a mouthful, but I tried to I tried to shed some light there.
Now I'm following along. I'm actually following your footsteps and pursuing my MBA right now. So a lot of the stuff you're talking about, I hear it a lot in class. So
yes.
Stuff. So just to key in a little bit more about what you're doing specifically, can you talk about your role at Weaveworks and the value that the company provides?
Yeah, no, great question. So you mentioned the word Kubernetes, and it's maybe a foreign term to most. I know we spoke that you may jump into like cloud versus cloud native a little bit later, but Kubernetes is a pretty new technology that was released out of Google. So it was created inside of Google and it was released to the market, open source. So it's now a free software in 2014. So my company created a commercial offering around this free technology. So in the world of open source technology, it's community-driven technology. So many larger institutions and smaller institutions contribute into these projects. So Kubernetes is a free open source project, and we have a platform that enables enterprises, predominantly large companies, who are trying to move their custom-built applications across the cloud. Kubernetes is a technology that helps you to do so. So we have created a platform that's a paid layer, because Kubernetes in itself is a little bit complex. So organizations may not want to deal with that type of complexity, so they can pay us from a platform perspective to assist them with the migration and movement of applications across what is known as the cloud.
See, can you give us, a basic explanation of the cloud and cloud computing?
Tia, I teed you up for that one, Marcus. I think we're flowing. I think we're flowing well in this conversation. So thank you. So as we speak about the cloud and cloud computing, what people are really speaking about is the management of servers and computing technology in a data center that's not theirs. So let me take a step back one more time again. The cloud is the computing. So as opposed to having a particular computer in front of you, from a larger perspective, there's usually a data center that houses multiple different computing environments. And this is actually how technology is made. There's a computing that's necessary. Along with the computing, there's actually also storage that's necessary as well. So from a computer standpoint, what's needed for any computer the basics for computers to run is three particular things: compute, storage, and networking. So those are the three things that actually make up the base layers of your computer. That is no longer hosted in a particular one location. It's hosted in what's called, I'll introduce another term, public cloud. So when we hear the word cloud today, what we're really actually talking about is actually three major companies that has commoditized cloud computing. And those three companies are Amazon and Amazon Web Services. This is Google and Google Cloud Platform, and Microsoft Azure. So these are 3 cloud platforms. These are 3 public clouds, and Amazon and AWS is the leader in this space today. And they went ahead with the business model of commoditizing the compute, networking, storage of computers. So for example, if Damani and Marcus wanted to create an application, what Amazon went ahead and did was make it very easy for you to go online with a credit card and be able to start writing software today in the cloud. And that is cloud computing. So this is an environment that's not in Marcus's basement or Damani's basement. Amazon is managing the compute, storage, and network in the cloud per se. So hopefully that I tried to give an explanation that folks can try to go back and follow. But to sum it up, anything that's running on your cell phone today, there's limited hardware that you actually need. So all of it is up in the cloud. It's vaporware, but it's technically running in someone's data center. So it's sitting in a physical location, but the difference is not one person owns it. You transfer the responsibility over to someone else.
I think you broke that down very well, but to some people that can still seem a little, intimidating. So how do you think we can get more, young, diverse individuals interested in career opportunities in tech and not be intimidated by, all of the big words and stuff?
Yeah, so again, I think children are naturally curious, and I don't think I think that the kids will get it. I think they just need to be exposed to it, right? Once they're exposed to different areas, then they start thinking differently. The next new technology has not been created. So what our children and what the next generation will be utilizing does not exist today. So if we think in that way, they're actually going to create the thing that is coming, or the thing that is coming hasn't been thought of as yet, or it may be a subset or a slight diversion of what exists today. So in saying that, I think we need to continue to understand that technology is changing at a rapid pace. And the way in which it's changing, we just need to continue to be adaptive and be curious and be entrepreneurial in our thinking, so that even if you're not starting a new business, you can be able to be dynamic to change, pivot within your current business. Well
said. Well said. Do you think diversity is important in tech-related fields?
Indeed. I think diversity is necessary across the board in any space, any area that you go. I think if you go into a room and it is all filled of the same, it looks the same, feels the same, smells the same, everyone has the same experiences, everyone has the same background, then I think you're actually doing a disservice to that particular industry space, because there's not new thought. There's not new experiences. From a software standpoint, it's not actually best practice to actually build the software if you don't go out and do the appropriate research on the users of the software, or you don't get a good sample set of different experiences to be able to build the thing properly. I think that's what we're experiencing here in the tech industry today. Is that there's a lot of there's a vast homogeneous environment, and I was going to say homogeneity, but it didn't flow appropriately, and I was hoping that it would have come out that way the first time. But my apologies, and I appreciate Leslie Bailey for her sniggering. It certainly lightens the load a little bit to when you're flown, to be able to see a face. Give you some reaction across the board. But I say this, it's really disheartening going into these rooms in corporate America and you be the only person. It really feels terrible when you go to a technology conference and there's a couple 100,000 people. You look around the room and you can spot when there's another black face. It's so for me, it goes back to there's work that needs to be done to ensure that I'm doing something that can have a measurable impact. Because I know firsthand that there are many talented people that exist within the space from diverse backgrounds. So when you know that that exists, it hurts even further because you know these people personally, you have personal relationships, you know them, you know their background. However, systematic things that have been put in place did not afford them the same opportunity to enter the same rooms or give them the flexibility to work in the same spaces. So that's essentially my view.
Great. All right, so we're gonna kind of close out on the questions, but I have one more question. What advice would you have for others who want to set off in a similar path as you?
My advice is to continue to be hungry, right? Continue to be hungry and thirst after knowledge and information. And as you continue to do so, I think once you have the skills and the drive, I think the formal things will kind of fall in place. I don't think that there's a cookie cutter approach. You know, as much as I think that Damani is unique and Damani is the best and Damani's a stud, Damani's a star and can do all things great, I know that that's what people want to believe, that Damani is one of a kind and we can't find another one. But actually, when I'm out in the streets and when I'm out in the community, there's 1,000 Damanis that actually didn't get the break and didn't get the opportunity to show out the way that I have. And again, my thing is to, one, expose people that they have the opportunity, and two, to keep my foot stuck in the door so I can at least crack the door so folks can also come in. So I think that's my personal mantra that I'm doing, exposing folks and trying to keep the door open so other folks can kind of enter and have a seat at the table as well.
We appreciate you for that.
Indeed, indeed.
All right, so now I wanted to open up the floor for any questions that you may have for Damani. You can drop them in the chat and I'll read them to him, or you can come off mute and ask him personally.
Well, I have reactions, but I would like to ask, you're talking about space and getting into the space, and it'd be great to know, I'm getting emotional because I do, but bottom line, what pushed you into that space? Because as someone who works with college students, I would love to know, from you and others, what pushed you so that maybe we can provide that push.
So I'm a student athlete. And I've been a student athlete my entire career. I see, Coach Nate Champion, head coach of Lemoyne basketball there. We have to, one, embrace and support young people's visions, goals, aspirations. We have to do a good job of embracing the path and the trajectory that they think that they want to go on. I think we also simultaneously have to be equipped enough to expose them and put enough opportunities around them that are suited to the path that they're already on, so that when the light bulb goes off in one's head, you have done your job to provide them what's necessary. So I bring that up from a student athlete perspective because many student athletes only want to be a professional athlete. I don't think that it's necessary that you one try to change one's mind about being a professional athlete, because the drive and enthusiasm and what's going to drive me to be the best and potentially get to be a professional athlete is the same thing that's going to drive me to be successful in the corporate spaces and be able to do what's necessary in the boardroom. So this same passion and energy that you saw on the court is the same passion and energy that you see Damani bring to the boardroom. However, what's necessary is that when I realize, or when that student athlete realizes that their days are over, they have to come to that place. Mentors, teachers, so many others have done what they can to provide the opportunities at their lap that they can easily pivot and turn when they get to that point. And I think we spend so much time with the fatigue and we don't provide the resources necessary. So when one is ready to make a decision, they have a vast tool of opportunities around. So just because you have information to share at a particular time, it may not be received at that particular time. But that's okay. How about you, as an educator or provider, create a list for the Damanias of the world. Damani, you're not ready to listen to me today, but I'm creating a letter of all of these great tools and resources that one day I'm hoping that you will go back to this email and take a look at these resources that I've curated for you that will become relevant for you at this particular time. And I'm going to send it to you, and I'm going to put a reminder in my calendar that every quarter, every 3 months, I'll send it to you. And I'll commit to myself that I'll add an additional thing to it every quarter. So at least I know that at least 4 times a year, I've done the due diligence to do that for someone else. And guess what, Leslie? You can also rinse and repeat, because I'm pretty sure that that same list, you can do that for 4 to 5 people. And then you can potentially create a listserv, and then this can be what you're doing to share within your subject matter expert. What I've also found is that educators, particularly in higher ed, have actually got lazy on the derrieres on the subject matter. And once they become tenured, they're not doing actually the work out into the field that's necessary to continue to understand how the world is evolving. So the way in which you taught a course has remained the same so long over time that you actually don't even have the tools necessary to equip the students that you're currently teaching for the careers that they're going to have. And I told Marcus to save the diversity questions to the end before the Malcolm and the Martin came out, because I get very passionate on some of those things. So I tried to come with a different persona through the tech conversation, because I know that I may not contain myself when we come to this time. So excuse me if you saw a different energy and passion in that response.
We needed it. Appreciate it.
Completely. Yeah, I'm not passionate at all. So, thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Leslie. Great question. I want to get to all of these. I know Leticia had a question. How did you originally get interested in tech? I see you replied, Damani, but you just want to elaborate a little bit more quickly on that.
No, I think we may have some juicier questions. Let's see if we find a better one.
Okay.
No disrespect, Leticia.
Is it Deirdre? Do you have any suggestions about college staff working with students with a tech interest, or anything you wish you exposed to yours during undergrad at Lemoyne related to tech and innovation?
Yeah, one, I wasn't exposed or pushed into the tech space much, but I would say that it hasn't evolved to the place that it is today. I would say that the research kind of piece that I mentioned earlier is necessary to continue to equip yourself with the tools necessary to push them into these areas. I think plugging into platforms like this, who are doing work in this space, actually provides opportunity. For example, right, like there's a new tech hub, there's funds, there's different things that Center State CEO is providing. There's other organizations as well that are providing things to the community. So do the little bit of legwork to find those extra, touch points who may have some subject matter experts that may be out of your field.
Good question. We have another one. How useful are aspects of sales and marketing within tech?
Amazing. I think in any role that you may encounter in your future, I think that one of the key pieces is being able to deal with people. So if you can naturally deal with people, I think that is something that you want to continue to harness. Two, I would say that your communication skills. I think that you want to continually work on your communication skills, both written and verbal. I've been afforded the opportunity to have the gift of gab from a young age, so my verbal communication was always at a state that allowed me to maintain a level of comfortability in different circles. However, it's also necessary to couple that with your written communication, because that goes certainly a long way. Specifically, sales and marketing are areas that are necessary from a business perspective to actually fuel the growth of any software, of any company. There's a sales component, whether direct or indirect. There is a huge area there. I've actually launched with a partner in Backs on Wall Street a tech sales platform to allow actually students to actually get an entry into tech sales. So feel free to send me a note if you have any students or any graduates who you think can make it from a sales standpoint. And marketing is growing ever so quickly. That one should harness and understand how marketing interacts with sales and marketing interacts with the business to ensure that the message can be able to get across appropriately.
Damani, this is Amanda Miles from Lemoyne. Hi, so proud of you. Sorry to interrupt everybody else, I apologize. So you might have heard, we do have a program called Erie 21 at Lemoyne College, which helps prepare students for a future in technology, but also really aims at trying to fight poverty here in the Central New York community, especially Syracuse. But my question for you is, I see a lot of our students on the call. So hi students, we miss you. But do you have any tips for these students? They are college students who are looking for jobs, and what, especially during these times of COVID and social distancing and all of that we're rolling with right now. What tips do you have for these students as they start their job search? And maybe what do you wish you knew when you were a student starting your search?
Yeah, well, two, I see Meredith Torbenay on the call. And this is not just at Lemoyne College, this is across higher education. The career services offices are underutilized, right? Like the career services offices should be continually requesting more support and more people, more human resources, because there should be an overwhelming reach out for those services, and they're not being utilized. So for me as a professional, any opportunities that I have, one of the early touches that I try to do is with the career services, whether at Lemoyne, Syracuse, or any other institution, you try to leave it there so that they have a repository of the information. And then coincidentally, they should be actually funneling out that information to their database. Unfortunately, that database isn't robust enough that's there. Amanda, I would say is that we have to encourage the curiosity for one's career, at least at the sophomore year. You have to have people and students starting to think about their careers earlier. If you're thinking about what you're going to do in your professional career in your last semester, in your senior year, you're behind the ball of the competition. because people and students have already went on and done first internships, second internships. They've realized that I don't like this, I do like this. And that type of process does not happen overnight. However, knowing that it is going to happen, all we can do is provide them with the resources for them to do the research and start searching what it is that they think that they want to do. But I do think from an institutional level, we have to continually look for resources outside of what career services is going to do. So it's not Meredith's or the career services department job by themselves. Each professor should be doing something. Each department should be doing something. Each different area should be doing something to provide your students a professional outlook in that particular area. So for example, from a business, so Lemoyne is a liberal arts college, and I'm a business major. Every subject matter expert, if you're teaching a course, should in that, if you're offering a 3-credit course, it should be mandatory that you should expose the students who take that course to what a professional job looks like in that particular field, or what type of job that you could potentially get through that industry or through that field. And I think that piece is missing. Everyone is not vested in the actual success of these students. It's only pushed off onto someone else.
Do you think it would be beneficial? I also work with Amanda in Erie 21, but for students to have co-op opportunities during their time in undergrad or shorter internships kind of thing?
So I think it's a multifaceted approach. So my answer is yes, all of the above. There's never enough. So the answer is yes to all of the above. So one, you have to look at the capacity of kind of what you can do from a human capital perspective and understand your limitations. However, the corporate partnerships, one, there's not enough of from the higher ed level and from the institutional level. So we need to be partnering with the industry to ensure that we're understanding what's necessary, what's coming, and what other opportunities may be there that I can provide opportunities. More people need to be providing more opportunities.
Great questions. I appreciate it. We have a little bit of time left, so I want to make sure I get to all of these. So Damani, I know you're passionate, but let's speed up.
Okay.
Your replies really quick.
Let's do
Appreciate
it,
you, man. So Glenn, can you share an obstacle you've overcome, a failure learned from, a pivot?
I wasn't paying attention, but I was reading something else, but I think I could multitask and try to do that one quickly. I was bummed that I didn't get a chance to play professional ball. You had to really pick your boots up and really start to figure it out. So in that, I started working with children. And I realized that I had a passion for the children. I thought I wanted to coach. I thought I wanted to teach. I did a little bit of that, but then I realized that there was really some significant money being made in the professional world, and the gifts that came to me naturally, I needed to go and make a different type of money. Right. So there's levels to this, right? There's nothing wrong with teachers and support staff, but you realize that there's a certain level and a ceiling. And I realized, and I was exposed to the potential ceiling and type of money that I can make from a professional landscape. So I made that pivot and have not been upset. I actually liked Tim Fenton's question about potential leadership areas that we can work on with developing students. So Tim Fenton is the former athletic director at Lemoyne College, and this is a really good area. What he's hitting, to answer his question, it's important for students to be well-rounded and to have a variety of experiences, not just professional ones. So if there's leadership opportunities and ways that you can enhance one's total portfolio through international travel, sports, leadership, different areas, all of those things go a long way outside of just the run-of-the-mill checkbox things. So that was a short answer and insight into where I think the nature of Tim Fenton's question was coming. I'll be naive if I don't take the time to answer President Linda Lemura of the great Lemoyne College's question. So who happens to be on an apprenticeship at Syracuse University at the current time, who took some time out to look at me through in front of her lovely steel fridge. Let me see. You referenced tenured faculty members keeping content current. Would you be willing to share thoughts directly, perhaps through written communication or in a public talk? Absolutely, not a problem at all. Oh, that was just affirmation.
Damani,
yeah.
I got a question for you.
Yes, Nate Champion.
So, you know, with you and your aspirations to play professional basketball and all that, like with every other student athlete that comes to Lemoyne, there's always that talk of, I want to play pro, right? And I think with you, you had that natural ability to get up and, like you said, pick your boots up when you realized that wasn't coming, you know, and you figured out how to explore those different avenues. How can we get in front of that? Not to the point where you're saying, well, you can't make it or anything like that, but there's going to be a time when the ball stops bouncing. And sometimes that's later in life, but sometimes it's right after college, you know? So what is your recommendation for us going forward on how to appropriately approach these student athletes?
Yeah, so I'll reference back to my response to Leslie, Nate, a little bit, in that you have a dual approach because you're firsthand dealing with these student athletes who really going to be passionate, and it'll be not the right approach coming from you as a coach to really deter them, because you should actually be pushing them. But I think that you need to surround yourself and create a network of opportunities that are there for student athletes, so that they can have the resources that they need at that particular right time. So I think what's necessary is for you to surround and put a system in place so that they can get the appropriate information. So for example, like you need to have a checklist, have all of my athletes gone to Meredith or gone to career services, have all of my athletes gone through a particular program through the athletic department, like how many students are taking advantage of SAC or the Student Athlete Advisory Committee, and am I enforcing that they do, so that outside of just them being a student athlete and fulfilling your requirements, there are other requirements that come from you as a coach that enforce that they become well-rounded and gets exposed to different areas. Because again, as much as I think Damani is great and awesome and amazing, someone may not show those areas of excellence at such an early age, but you can see that potential. And that potential that's saw in these other student athletes, although they don't blossom at the same time, you recognize it, and it's our due diligence necessary to kind of push in that direction.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nate. Great question. I see another great question in the chat from Justin. I understand that many New York City high schools have significant African-American student populations, but is Black on Wall Street targeted specifically towards African-American students, or can any student participate?
Yeah, so again, I'm all for everyone can participate in everything, right? But I like to be intentional about the work that I do, and my specific area of focus is African Americans, because I understand the disparity and the disproportion of resources that have been provided to those communities. So even if you look at the Syracuse specifically, if you look at Syracuse City School District, there may be like 17% white. When you go out to Marcellus or some of these areas, it goes up to like 93% white. Like some different areas within, and I've done the numbers and research, so I know the breakdown of demographic in Syracuse City versus every other area around. And I've assisted with this for the JP Morgan grant that Lemoyne has received, as well as Syracuse State has received. So I'm very well versed on the numbers. There's a significant lack of resources given, even if you took everyone that you had around and poured it into Syracuse School City District. It can't be enough. And that's because of there's other things that are in place that prohibit the growth of Syracuse School District and the lack of resources that's provided. So in order for one to be, so you know, people don't like quotas and people don't like, you know, the specific targeted group, and everybody wants to use these broad terms. But unless we be specific about the work that we want to do, you won't be able to have a measurable impact. And everyone at the higher ed level and in the business world knows what it is to have a number above your head. You got to stay within a budget, you got to hit your numbers, and that's how you measure it. So when you put out these programs and you're naive not to be specific about the work, it's actually contradictory. And not effective. And we don't see the results. And again, to further belabor the point, the reason why I've chose finance and technology, because if you look at it, these are the two highest grossing industries in the world, finance and technology. If you look at the demographic of who's involved in it, there is 2% African American that accounts for it. That's a huge gap, a huge delta. If you look across higher education, I've done the numbers, there are 40% of people who graduate, I remember that number might be off. There may be 40% of people that graduate higher education with degrees in STEM, science, technology, education, and math. Out of that population of graduates with STEM degrees, 2% of that number is actually African American across higher ed, across the US. So again, we are not doing, from a macro level, we are not doing enough to ensure that we're setting up an entire group for success. So if you want to do work for a particular group, you got to be specific in it.
Well said. We're well over time, but I believe we have room for one more question. Kara, I know you dropped a private chat to me and you had a question. Did you want to come off mute and ask?
Hi, I would love to do that, but I'm trying to sneak in 2 questions in one, so I want to warn you in advance. Hey, Damani, this has been really great and really rich. I started asking a question a little bit earlier, and it was like, the first question was, how much do you need to know before jumping into the tech industry versus how much do we, and like, can we and do we need to learn once we're in it? So like, that's kind of the first question. And you spoke to this a little bit when you were talking about kind of like continuing to learn and kind of upskill yourself. But then the other kind of question that I have too is also thinking about continuous improvement and ongoing learning. What have you found you needed to do to continue to move up once you've gotten in the door and keep working your way up to the office that you want to be in? So 2 questions, pick how you want to use your time. Yeah,
great question. And I answer it simply. I think we put these false ceilings. Majority of anything that you learn is possibly going to be on the job. So you actually don't need to know that much about any career that you're going to potentially get into. The type of learning that you're going to get hands-on when you're on the job is actually paramount. And in any job, there's a typical on-ramp that one expects that folks are going to be learning. And there's usually training programs to help get one ramped up, especially in tech. So let's stop putting these false narratives that we need to be experts prior to getting in. 2, in regards to like, you just got to continue to be hungry, right? You know, you get into the door and you realize that people above you are not smarter than you, are not better than you, and you realize that you can be able to take their spot or be able to do what they do or get the type of money that they're getting. So once you get in there, just continue to be hungry and then you'll find your path forward.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you, Kara. Thank you, Damani. I realize we didn't get to a few questions in the chat. I apologize. We're well over time, but there will be more opportunities to connect with Damani for sure. So I just wanted to thank you, Damani, for coming in and, you know, sharing your insights with us. And I want to thank everyone who took the time to spend this evening with us to learn a little bit more from Damani. If you're interested in more speaker series events, you can always find them on the Center State CEO website. And you can reach out to me personally if you wanted to get involved with what we have going on with Tech and Culture. And I can drop my email in the chat. So once again, I appreciate everyone for coming out and have a great night.
Thank you, everyone.